Hello and welcome to the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. Our guest today is Denise McCain. She's the director of the Family Justice Center in Prince George's County.
That's correct.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
So you deal with different issues in the county. Domestic violence is one of them. So
Yes.
can we start there?
Absolutely.
What services do you all provide to victims, survivors
Right.
of domestic violence?
So let's just start out. The Family Justice Center, it's an initiative of the Circuit Court for Prince George's County, and we are designed to really serve the needs of, as you pointed out, survivors of domestic violence, but also sexual assault, human trafficking, as well as elder abuse. As we all know here in this county in particular, but realistically everywhere in the country, domestic violence is a very serious problem. And what we have found is that the system and processes to access services are just daunting. I mean, if you think about it, someone who has been victimized, perhaps traumatized, we don't know what they've been through, but the thought of having to get up and come out and try to navigate systems that can be very difficult and complex, particularly when you are in a state of shock or perhaps still fearful. It could be overwhelming. So what we've done and what the Family Justice Center is, it's really what we consider to be a one-stop shop resource. We've made the process very simple by co-locating a number of services that are available to anyone who's eligible to just come in and access them without having to go to 5, 10, 15 different places.
And what are those services?
So starting out, we look at it as sort of a two-door process. On one level, we have all criminal justice providers. So if someone wanted to get assistance with a protective order, if they wanted to file criminal charges, we have prosecutors there. If they wanted to have an investigation done, the police department is there. So those are all the criminal justice, and of course the sheriff's office, who is responsible for actually serving warrants. They're available on the first floor. The second floor is what we consider all of the other supportive services, and that would include counseling, that would include shelter. We also provide very brief medical services. We are there to help people get supportive services such as food stamps, cash assistance, as well as housing. As we know, that's another tremendous need.
When people come in, what is the greatest need at this point? What is the most common need?
Well, first and foremost, what I think people typically need, and you have to look at it because every case is different, where they are in the process. Some people are really not in imminent danger, so I wouldn't say safety would be a first and primary need for them. The overwhelming majority of people that come in, they really are looking for support and information, and I would say legal information. As we know that legal services has been considered to be one of the most effective tools in helping a person to really leave an abusive relationship, because there's so many questions, there are issues, there's child support, there's custody.
People don't know their rights.
And they don't know their rights, and that's a very big concern. Or even how to get a protective order. Not that you necessarily need a lawyer to do that, but I think it's to your advantage to have
Is it a complicated process?
to get a protective order?
Yes.
In and of itself, it's not. However, I would still recommend someone getting support to obtain a protective order, simply because, you know, it's very straightforward, but if you don't really understand and know that, for instance, a judge, their job is not to facilitate the process by asking you questions. You have to know what you want when you go into that particular hearing. And it is a proceeding. You have to justify the need for it, as well as make sure that it includes all of the necessary things that you would want, such as you would want this individual to provide ongoing maintenance if you are not the breadwinner. You may want to make arrangements regarding custody visitation with your child. You know, their role is really just to expedite this order, but not to tell you what you need to say in order to get it. So it's always best to have someone that can at least inform you, educate you, make you aware of what this process is about. And I think another key factor is to ensure that you are effectively demonstrating that you are in fear. It's not okay to just say, you know, we had an argument and I just don't want him to be around me or her to be with me anymore. You have to demonstrate and prove that there's reason why this person should be removed from their home. And people don't always understand that, and the orders could be denied.
You understand, or you know, that there has been an issue with the shelters, or the one shelter in the county.
Yeah,
It's back up and operating.
it is.
But do you think that the politicians in the county understand the needs of these domestic violence survivors?
You know, that's a very tough question. I think what we are finding today, and I will only speak from my experience, since the Family Justice Center has been open, I think there has been a real shift with regard to the focus and the priority for domestic violence and the need for services. For instance, the Family Justice Center, let's just start there to begin with. That was a very collaborative effort. As I said, it is an initiative of the court. However, we needed the support of the county executive. The county executive contributed over $2 million to have that building completely renovated and continues to pay for the monthly rent on that building, has paid it out for 10 years, to be honest. So that is a major commitment, and I think a recognition of the fact that we needed to do more, that perhaps we weren't serving people to the best of our ability, which is what the Family Justice Center is. In addition to that, the state's attorney's office recently received funds to have what they call a SAFE project. It sort of complements what we're doing at the Family Justice Center by adding additional financial resources for people. So if someone comes to the Family Justice Center, they need a lawyer, they need counseling, we can help them with that. But you know what? They want to move, but they don't have the money they need for security deposit, or they may want to leave the state. We don't have cash. So those are the gaps that the state's attorney's office project will meet. So we work very collaboratively with them.
Is it common or uncommon for counties to just have one shelter?
You know, as crazy as it sounds, it's not uncommon. In fact, in the state of Maryland, most, if not all jurisdictions, with the exception of one that I'm aware of anyway, they all only have one shelter. And I think what makes it so much of a problem here in Prince George's County is because of the size. Prince George's County is the second largest jurisdiction in the state of Maryland, and one would think that you would need more housing. But it's not it's not uncommon. I think Baltimore County is the only county in the state that has multiple shelters.
How did we get to a place where the shelter had to be shut down? I mean, I know you don't direct the shelter, but how did we get to a place where things got that bad?
You know, that's a tough question as well, and it's unfortunate because, you know, we know realistically survivors are the ones that suffered the most as a result of that. But that's a very difficult, the management of a shelter is not something that one would take lightly. And I don't know what the particulars were. I certainly don't want to speak in a negative or disparaging way about any one individual. But what I can say is that in order to run any shelter, any facility that's serving survivors, you have to have committed, well-trained leaders, and you have to also have funding to make sure that you're able to operate. The shelter was a nonprofit, which meant that they were really, they were required, if you will, to actually go out and find funding. There was some funding that was provided by the county, but that wasn't enough to manage the facility. So again, without going into details or knowing much, I can say generally speaking, as with any nonprofit, if you know that funding is something that you need to keep your doors open and to do business, obviously you wouldn't want to get out there and raise funds, write grants, get the support of others. You have a board. Board leadership is also very important. I don't know what the structure of the board is like, what their experience was like, whether or not they were contributors, whether or not they helped with fundraising. Again, having trained personnel, all of those things do come into play and would very easily lead to the demise of any organization, particularly a nonprofit.
We're going to switch gears here. I've spoken to Dr. Hodges of Still I Rise, and she brought up some very disturbing um, things about sex trafficking in Prince George's County.
Yeah, yeah, that is on the rise. I'm sure she told you that is the second largest and fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. And we here in Prince George's County happen to be prime for it, given a number of reasons, largely our proximity to the highways, 95, 495, as well as being in this region that we're close to Washington, Virginia. Maryland is right in the hub. There's a great deal of money here, but there's also a great deal of poverty here. We have gambling, we have casinos, we have conventions. These are all things that really breed and attract that enterprise, unfortunately. And we're seeing a lot more of it.
And one thing she mentioned was the fact that it's very hard to help the victims because it's hard to get them to stay.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard to get them to stay, but it's also harder to get them to speak. They're fearful. And the real tragedy in all of this is that victims of trafficking are being prosecuted and charged as prostitutes. So they're being re-victimized. So why would you speak up if you think that you're now going to be arrested? You're fearful of your trafficker. You don't trust the system. So it's really difficult to prosecute and to get these girls and boys the help that they need, because you have to have certain elements to have a legal case. There has to be force, there has to be fear, force, coercion, or fraud. So you have to prove all three elements in order for it to really be a charge.
And most of them don't come from here, or do they?
A lot of them do come from here. I think the majority that we're seeing are right here. I mean, it's going to surprise you when you hear that many of these young people are being trafficked, they're being recruited from their peers in schools. Even more tragic is the fact that sometimes their traffickers are family members, mothers. We just recently had a case with a young girl that came into the Family Justice Center. Fortunately, she was before a judge who understood this, and she recognized some of the signs. She knew that the stories that were being told did not make sense, and she ordered the mother to bring the child across the street to the Family Justice Center. When we had that child one-on-one, she was more than happy to talk. She had pictures, she had evidence, she gave details, and we were able to connect her with one of the partners, Courtney's House, which is designed to address human trafficking. She spoke with her very freely, and when I spoke to the director of Courtney's House the next day, I said, wasn't that odd that she spoke? Because we know they generally don't want to. She said, no. She said she'd been telling people all along, but no one believed her. No one believed her. And her mother, we had to separate her from the mother. But when she was around the mother, she wasn't giving a lot of information. We also have reason to believe, with evidence, that the mother was very much involved with this trafficking, that she was the trafficker. She was working with the trafficker.
We recently in the county had an arrest that dealt with the men.
Yeah.
Who were purchasing,
yes,
who were dealing,
yes,
in this trip, but we're not getting enough of them.
We're not, and that's one of the things that the Human Trafficking Task Force, Prince George's County does have a task force, which Dr. Hodges is one of the committee members. You know, that organization is working very hard to bring forth laws, policies, and things to make changes that will make this much less prevalent. They were looking at having John schools, which, you know, there's some controversy as to whether or not they make a difference. John schools is almost like when you're found guilty of prostitution or trafficking, not the trafficker, but the person who's purchasing sex. Your sentence is that you have to go to a school. And or you would then be outed, where your picture is in the paper and you're listed as a purchaser. I forgot the name of it. A John, basically. You're listed as a John.
A John school.
A John school, yeah, yeah. So they're doing some research on that. around the country. Other states have used them. I don't know that it's necessarily going to work. But one thing that has made a difference is that hotels are now required to go through a training to be able to identify, because this is where a lot of it takes place in hotels. So when you see rooms being rented, you see people coming out, you see young girls coming and going or staying there. I mean, that should tell you this is not someone that's there for overnight for a stay.
You guys also deal with elder abuse.
Yeah, yeah. Elder abuse is also something that we see. Again, it doesn't necessarily reveal itself in obvious ways because, like any other victim, most elderly people that are being victimized, they're afraid. Their abusers are typically family members, and those are their caretakers, and they're fearful. So they don't necessarily come forward. It's only when someone else identifies that there's a problem that we can then work with the Department of Family Services. They can then do an assessment. But even with that, unless that individual is removed from the environment, there's not a lot that can be done. We're looking at bringing on some additional partners that will really focus more on elder abuse because I think we're missing the mark. I believe that there are more seniors who are being victimized and affected by this than we realize.
Do you deal with teens?
We do. I'm glad you asked that question. As a matter of fact, we just started a teen empowerment program. 1 in 10 teenagers have reported that they have been abused by a partner in school, in high school.
I just did a report about the fact that teen girls in D.C. are much more likely to be involved in the criminal justice system. Another report said that minority teen girls of color, are much less likely to be considered innocent. They're adultified. They're also more likely to be suspended from school in all 50 states.
Yeah.
There is a crisis.
There is a crisis
when it comes to girls of color.
There is definitely a crisis. I knew about the suspension issue, that they were not given the same punishment, if you will, that other students were given for violations in schools, but I wasn't aware of the other statistics regarding the arrests or being involved in the criminal justice system. But there is a serious problem, and we are finding that girls are also identified as the perpetrators a lot more frequently, which could perhaps speak to why they're involved in the criminal justice system. There's probably a lot of anger there. There's probably some things going on. One thing I would say, what would make sense to me, if you see a lot of angry girls, maybe something else is going on, and that anger is their way of lashing out, i.e., they're perhaps being abused at home, or they're seeing things that are happening to them. That is an indicator of abuse when you see children acting out, doing things differently, becoming violent. That could be a cause.
How are you guys addressing the issue?
We have we have this teen empowerment program now where we are doing much more preventive work, intervention work. We're getting out, we're going into the schools. We're working with the Love Foundation, One Love, which was Yardley Love's, and I remember,
Yes.
from Virginia University, a young woman who was killed. Her family started a foundation, and they actually have a wonderful film that they show as an educational tool. Very well done. We have that film. We were out throughout the county in February, which was Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. We showed it to teens. We just did a huge summit at the Tucker Road Community Center called the Glow Up, the Teen Empowerment Summit, where we had we had actually brought the parents in as well, because we also know that parents have to be educated about what they see with their children. It's happening right there, and they don't even understand.
Why do you think teens are, is it what they see at home? Why do you think that this is on the rise among teens, or has it always been here and we just didn't recognize it?
No, I think it's twofold. From a research standpoint, children who witness abuse are more likely to either become victims or abusers. So that's a research side of it. However, I personally think that we are living in a time and a society where violence has become normalized. When you look at the videos, the music, the just movies, games, things that teens do on a regular basis, it seems very normal, but it's actually violence. Young girls are being disrespected. They're being objectified in ways that would suggest that, I don't deserve to be treated any differently. So when they're in a relationship and they're treated that way, they're called names, they're pulled on, they're hit, it's normal because this is what I see on television. This is what other celebrities do. So I'm no different than anyone else. When you add to that perhaps there's not the level of involvement, is what I will say, of parents who aren't necessarily there for good or bad reasons, who aren't there for their children. These kids are left to basically make their own determination as to whether or not this is right. And they're young. They don't know what a healthy relationship looks like. My boyfriend wants to be with me. He texts me 20 times a day. He wants me to stay with him and not be with my girlfriends.
That's not love.
That's not love. But what do they know about love? What do they know about love?
Before we run out of time, I want to make sure again that we emphasize what you guys do, where you guys are located.
Absolutely. The Family Justice Center, again, is an initiative of the Circuit Court for Prince George's County. We are there to serve survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and elder abuse. We provide an array of comprehensive services ranging from social services, counseling, legal services, supportive services, governmental, as well as criminal justice support. We do this, all services are free of charge. The only criteria be that you are a resident of Prince George's County and or your offense occurred in Prince George's County. We're located directly behind the Circuit Court, 14757 Main Street in Upper Marlboro. We're open 5 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Friday, 8:30 to 5. Thursdays are our late days. We're there until 8 p.m. So again, it's a wonderful, wonderful resource. The feedback that we're getting from clients has just been overwhelmingly positive.
And that's great that you guys are available for folks, because we were talking off air about the number of cases where it leads to death.
Absolutely.
It can be a fatal situation if you're in a domestic violence situation.
Absolutely.
There's hope.
There's hope.
There's help.
And there's help. And don't wait. Don't wait, because we don't want you to become a statistic.
And we will give all of that information you just gave, we'll give it during the credits.
Wonderful.
It has been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, my pleasure.
We've been talking to Denise McCain, and she's director of the Family Justice Center, and they provide an array of services. If you need them, the help is there.
Yes, we're there to serve.
You've been watching the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. Have a great day.
What are you, superheroes?
Just four brothers who hate bullies and love this city.
Whoa!
at the top of your game. You're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Puedes encontrar aventuras en cualquier parte, pero el mejor lugar para iniciar la búsqueda está en el bosque.
I spied something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees.
Nothing to do with snow.
Sal a descubrir animales increíbles, hermosas plantas y árboles que se unen para crear una aventura inolvidable.
Wow.
Así que ven con tus seres queridos
Don't even.
a explorar un mundo de posibilidades.
Come on, this way.
Visita descubreelbosque.org para encontrar el bosque o parque más cercano.
Here we go. We're gonna go out there in the rain. Gonna get wet. All right, here we go. Okay, quick. Oh yeah, yes. So much fun. Mwah. Yeah, Dad. We're getting so wet. Oh,
Green hat, red hat, oops. Red shirt, blue shirt, yellow shirt, oops. Yellow pants, red pants, green pants, oops.